Hey guys, we're going to dive into something I think you will like today, and that is jumping into RippleX and what they are doing. Joining me today is Akinyele.
Yes, you got it.
Right. Akinyele. All right, so excellent. You are the head of engineering.
Yep.
You look at the element of growth around the XRP ledger.
Correct.
And really what we're dealing with right now is the quantum threat. Everybody's been talking about it. We've had several guests on here on this show that have talked about Q-Day. Tell me where you are right now and what is it looking like in terms of possibility?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing is that Q-Day is real, it's credible, and it's no longer like if, but when. And I think that's a massive shift from where we were a couple of years ago. And I think the North Star for the space is that we have to be ready, right? We have to understand what it takes to prepare for this day and how to migrate not just blockchain technology and infrastructure, but just financial infrastructure and internet infrastructure. And so it actually goes much beyond, the lens in which most people are looking at it from. And I think for us, it's really important that we, absorb that understanding that this is real, it's coming, and there are multiple angles in which things are accelerating. We have AI that's also being in play with NVIDIA, experimenting with models to help with, error correction codes to make quantum computing hardware much more reliable, right? So that's one angle of threats. And then, or usefulness, but also threats for the realization of a quantum hardware that works at scale. And then there's the algorithm, which is called Shor, and there's another one called Grover. But Shor is the algorithm that, classically has been, the way to break traditional public key cryptography. And it's getting better. Like the recent research from Google was pointing out exactly the dimensions in which Shor's algorithm is getting better and more efficient to be able to break, classical cryptography that we rely on today.
So, when you look at building a team around this, because this is getting to the point right now where, and I've talked to several development teams who said, Paul, listen, we are really starting to scale because we're bringing in devs that are as advanced as possible around what AI is building that essentially would be the quantum threat vector. So finding the right kind of devs for that.
There's been a lot of people building in this direction for quite some time, probably over the last 10 years, I would say. The thing that's been changing is the lack of standardization by NIST, the National Institute of Science and Technology. Over the last couple of years, they've been more intentional about standardizing on the quantum safe signatures that would be appropriate, that would actually stand the test of time. And I think that's the area that has sort of not gotten as much attention because that's once something is standardized, then people know what to build to. And so it's not actually that there's no lack of developers building in the space, is that there's lack of standardization and the parameters that would be secure for people to adopt it and interoperate.
How do they develop those standards?
Through the same processes that led to the standards that led to the original public key cryptography that the internet was built on, which is RSA, elliptic curve cryptography. There are working groups that are doing research and looking at the state of the art, understanding the attacks, and writing proposals and basically putting forth submissions on the branch of cryptography that is actually quantum safe. I won't go into the weeds of what those branches of cryptography are, but there's been a lot of work over the last 10 years to just move the space forward. There are. And over the last couple of weeks, I've heard from a number of teams that are building quantum signatures for different use cases that are like speaking up to the interest in XRPL to see how much they can bring their ideas to the ledger to kind of support our roadmap of migrating the ecosystem in a couple of years.
When you think about timeline here, everybody is saying that every month goes by, the acceleration is increasing for that vector to occur faster. We've seen almost every blockchain out there. Vitalik has talked about this, Sergey at Chainlink, obviously the Bitcoin community. What is your opinion, do you think, in terms of timeline?
So I think the guidance has been to prepare for 2030 as the point at which we should be migrating and be quantum ready. I think the recent research findings have pushed that timeline up. And I think that's what's revealing about the pace at which the potential of a quantum computing system that can break cryptography our classical cryptography can be realized, right? And so what that means is that like we can't necessarily wait till 2030. We have to be ready basically in the next couple of years, so that in the event that technology outpaces the rate at which we're able to migrate, because again, it's like an architectural transition. It's not like a software update in the traditional sense. And so because of that like massive impact to how we operate infrastructure in generally, we have to kind of experiment and be more proactive in just being ready and have the contingency plans to make it possible to keep people's assets, financial assets, and our secure communications safe in light of the fact that if this hardware exists and is realized to break cryptography, it will most likely be silent.
I will say this, we've talked to the Ethereum Foundation.
Yeah.
They've given us a fairly confident feeling that ETH is going to be ready. We're now talking to RippleX, so can you be confident that we feel like the XRP ledger is going to be ready?
I think it's by necessity that we have to be ready, right? And so we've put forth a roadmap that reflects that intention, and I think our call right now is to the ecosystem that we support to like say, hey, we are going to be doing a number of things over the next year to just educate ourselves and the community on what it's going to look like in this post-quantum era, and show the breadcrumbs of like what we're doing to keep assets safe while we migrate versus like how it's going to impact the validator infrastructure, how people do key management, how people interact with the network. Like all of those things will be impacted, and people aren't absorbing that yet. And so we want to just, I don't want to use the word condition, I just want to educate our community so that they're prepared as we're introducing the technology that makes everyone safe.
Let's pivot a little bit to AI for a second, because I think when you look at the XRP digital immune system, you guys, of course, deep in the stack, you're starting to utilize AI.
Right.
What does that look like, and how fast is that moving right now?
Week to week basis, the models are getting better, right? We've heard about Mythos, and OpenAI has their own, latest model called Cyber something. I forget the reference, but essentially, like the tooling for AI as it relates to security is getting, significantly better for blockchain protocols as well. And so we've basically been seeing people leveraging it for finding vulnerabilities, and so we've basically taken a proactive approach to find them ourselves and fix them and sort of release fixes on a monthly basis to basically defend against this massive threat on the architecture of XRPL.
I've talked to a lot of devs where they're running millions and millions of sequences into trying to test and break. You look at XRP Ledger C++, which is essentially the capacity to be able to scale at that level. So that gives you an advantage. Do you think that with those kinds of model testing, where would you say in a year? In 2027, here we are at XRP Las Vegas. Do you think we're going to be a lot further along, or do you feel like challenges are still going to be?
No, we have to. So this year is all about like addressing the foundation, right? And we're seeing it with other like ecosystems. I think people are seeing like 23-year-old bugs in Linux, kernels, right? So this is the moment in time to really use these tools and this superpower to find all of the cracks in the XRPL foundation and start to evolve the architecture in a way that keeps things robust, for the institutions that we're serving, right? They have an expectation of reliability and security and deterministic settlement and the ability to execute financial transactions on a blockchain that's purpose-built for financial use cases. And so that mandate requires that we are intentional in leveraging this technology to shine light on where we can make the architecture robust.
I love the fact that you're talking that kind of language, because to me, this is the situation that I think we're dealing with across all of crypto right now, which starts to really address the issue around institutional capital that's starting to move into this space in a big way. You look at institutional DeFi, now we're talking about really where RLUSD is starting to play a big role. Talk to me a little bit about what you guys are doing in that space, because this is kind of the next hammer that would give you confidence once this is solved. Institutional DeFi is right there.
No, absolutely. So there are a number of features that we are building to support, the institutional DeFi roadmap. And they kind of speak to this notion of enabling this full life cycle of capital that institutions are familiar with, right? Like issuing tokens, trading, collateral, and repo-based transactions, and credit and yield. Like these are all the things that institutions want to do on Ledger. And so we are building the essential building blocks to empower that, around RLUSD, which can be used as a form of collateral, can be used for trading. There's a lot of use cases around RLUSD that the primitives that we are introducing to XRPL over time are enabling around institutional DeFi.
How will decentralized identity play a role in this?
Well, so for decentralized identity, I think there's two angles to that. I think there's the angle of allowing people to build systems of which you can do compliance on chain, right? And sort of the toolkits to allow institutions to do regulated trading, with participants that are known. So the components for in XRPL to enable that is part of what essential identity kind of speaks to. There are obviously other use cases, but it's really the compliance piece that we've been honing on to just make it easier for institutions to do the things that they do off chain, but they need the right primitives on chain to kind of operate in the way they're already familiar, and that's where our compliance toolkit that's being built on Ledger really comes into play.
Well, and I think that also leads into confidentiality. The need for that, ZK proofs, obviously, that's playing into really the future for this to make. How do you feel about that stack portion around XRPL?
Yeah, so that's one of the interesting features that I'm really excited about that's coming to XRPL because it's a way of allowing institutions to hide their competitive advantage, right, and to hide the flows between how they trade, collateral and how they borrow against it and what they do with it. So confidential RLUSD is kind of one of our concrete use cases around confidential transfers, but it's really a protocol that is encrypting transactions or transaction amounts and token balances in a way that again provides that competitive advantage for institutions that want to bring what they do off chain in like silo databases on chain and still get the same privacy that they enjoy today operating off chain, but they gain the efficiency of moving at internet scale with the ledger, right? Because we have determinate settlement, 3 to 5 seconds, So that's the advantage. Like you get the speed, but you get shared infrastructure for security, which is how we position privacy in terms of the confidential transfer protocol.
Yeah. All right, Ayo, last question here. Let's go to multi-purpose tokens. Yes. This is pretty much a game changer for RWAs. Talk to me a little bit about that, because this is a new technology I think that's really advancing.
Yeah, no, I'm excited about the multi-purpose token standard. It's actually evolution of issued currencies on XRPL, which are called IOUs, effectively. I think the great thing about the standard is that it's like bringing two things together, like fungible and non-fungible type of assets. Okay. And so you can use this to represent stablecoins, you can use it to represent RWAs, you can do both, right? Is really what we were trying to accomplish. And it takes less stress on the ledger. Yeah. So those are technical advantages, right? But the things that I really grabbed to that are more like the properties of what it does. It's like it makes it easier for institutions to launch tokens and tokenize real world assets in a way that's simpler than other ecosystems where you typically require smart contracts, right? You only require an API. It's very simplistic how we've designed it to make it easier for institutions to not be blockchain experts in order to tokenize their assets, right? And so the infrastructure that they have to build off-chain is much lighter around NPTs than in other solutions.
This
I think that's the real unlock for us.
That is a good unlock, I think, going forward. Listen, I'm really excited about where this is heading. I love to see the fact that devs are still coming in very powerfully, so thanks you so much.
We have a lot of work to do to kind of educate and kind of expand the developer ecosystem.
I think people are learning though. They're understanding it, especially when you look at people who are invested in XRP. They look at the ledger, they want to make sure it's bulletproof. To hear these kind of things, I think is really important for the community. So,
absolutely.
Ayo, thanks for coming in today.
Thanks so much, Paul.
You bet.
Really appreciate it.
All right, you guys, you know what to do. Make sure and drop some comments down below. We'd love to get your feedback on where you guys think this technology is going, especially when it comes to quantum proofing blockchain. We'll catch you guys later. Take care. If you like this video, hit like and subscribe, drop a comment down below, and also join our free private member group. The link is in the description.